Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter 3 of A Call from the Stars, A Call to Arms. Point of view Sergeant First Class Sin, active. Well, it's been about 10 years since we had our first encounter with the techs. And, things got very interesting. The buildup of technology was something most of us were not ready for. And I'm not just talking about building ships or anything like that. I'm talking about daily life. The biggest change came in the form of nanomachines or nanites or nanobots or whatever you want to call it. Everybody's got like 10,000 words for it. As it turns out, our own governments have been working on nanomachines for a long, long time, but they couldn't quite figure out how to get it to work within the human body. The tech have a way of using bioorganic technology. If you mix that in with our non organic tech, it's actually surprising what they came up with. At first, a lot of people didn't want to take a shot full of robots because, well, we've already had, what the hell was that called? Some disease back in the day. Turned out not to be anything, but the shot caused so much damage to people. And we lucked out. The tech, they put a stop to that quick because what happened with the nanomachines changed everything about being human. One of the major things is that now we don't have to worry about being hurt. Well, it still hurts, don't get me wrong. You break an arm, you break a leg, you're still going to scream like a little girl. But that break is going to heal in about 24 to 48 hours. Severed limbs take a bit longer, but they will regenerate completely. The only thing is they can't regenerate all the work you've done in that limb. So atrophy is a real bitch. I know because I lost a leg about a year ago. I was able to grow it back in about 2 weeks, and then it was about 6 months of physical therapy before I was actually up and running again. So, hey, it is what it is. I'm not complaining. It's better than missing my third leg. Sorry, old joke. But that is the biggest change that happened to us. A lot of people started doing other things to themselves, being cybernetic or cyberan, or I think, no, cyber, that's what they call it, is pretty common nowadays. People switching out their eyes, their ears for something they perceive as better. But hey, that's them. I'm good with what I got right now. And me, as since I'm back in the army, it's a good thing too, because trying to keep up with some of these young guys, especially after they got their injections, which you can't do until you stop growing, it's a big deal. It's hard to keep up with those kids sometimes. Sometimes. But that's not to say all the tech works. Oh, they gave us new rifles. These, basically, they call it a Gauss rifle. It's a rail gun, okay, or a coil gun. Either way, the dang thing doesn't need propellant, although it does make still a bit of a racket. Sends those projectiles out at just about 1.2 times the speed of sound. It still cracks through the air. You just don't get the actual bang from a slug, the old-fashioned slug thrower. Get the gunpowder behind it. The only problem with these new ones is they have a lot of problems when it comes to full automatic fire. They're almost exclusively semi-automatic. So you still see a lot of the old ones hanging around. Usually old machine guns, the miniguns and things of that nature. They still work quite well. As for what we got, also, that new armor. Oh, I hated the Gen 1. The Generation 1 stuff was so bad. Oh, sweet God. I swear, they get the ideas for all this stuff through the old video games. It looked like something from a video game from when I was a child to craft the stars type thing. The thing was just big and bulky, clunky. It took an hour to get in this stupid thing, and it took almost the same amount of time to get out of it. God help you if you had to pee. I mean, yeah, it had a recycle unit in it, but come on, half the time that didn't work. It didn't work. The CNI was what was needed, cranial neural interface, which I got about 6 months ago. I was very hesitant to get it, but you need one of these to operate the new suits. They are much more streamlined. However, again, they're taking cues off of sci-fi, and I'm just like, guys, have some better invention here. But I digress. It's a lot easier to move in. It's a lot easier to get in and out of buildings with, and you're not clunking your head on a door frame like some guy in white plastic every time you go through. At least for combat soldiers like me, this has been a big deal. The new weapons, the new armor. But that also comes with a lot more new training and a lot more new training recruits, not all of which are human. We've had a few of the Tets come through, and oh boy, they need their own body armor. They need their own exosuits just to keep up with us. You would think a species that big would be able to keep up on a foot march. I don't think so. They're down on all six limbs after an hour just trying to keep up with us. Looking at us, breathing hard, going, how are you still going? That's our genetics. This is what we do. This is what we're designed for. Another thing that really surprised me is the fact that they could not use a projectile weapon for a long time. It took us a very long time to get them to understand how to use one of our projectile weapons. And again, for a species that's so big, if they stand up on their back two legs, they are very top heavy. Don't get me wrong, they can do some amazing things. They can climb up like nobody's business, and they can maneuver four different items at the same time. They can disassemble and reassemble things so fast it makes your eyes hurt. But God help you, when he gets to a combat situation, it's no wonder they get their butts kicked, and hard. You would think even during our combatives, our mixed martial arts, usually jujitsu, or this new style Yoara that's coming out, or even Krav Maga, you would think with their extra limbs they'd be kicking our butts. No, we take them down all the time. And I almost feel bad for it, but let's face it, we got to get these guys ready for combat. They have to be ready. Now, working with the aliens is one thing, but when they started reorganizing for a new space force, I didn't think I'd end up on the internet the way I did. Somebody asked me the question right outside the PX, the post exchange. What do you think about them organizing the way they are? I said, is people going to watch this? I said, yep, it's going out live. I said, good. And I grabbed the microphone. I said, here's the problem. You're fucking up by the numbers. You are totally messing this up. First off, what the hell does sectioning off the Air Force have to do with the space? We have people that are set for this sort of thing. They're called submariners. They already know how to operate a vessel in an atmosphere, or lack thereof, that is always trying to kill them. They know how to do this. They're set up for it. It's an all volunteer force. Do you not understand this? Of course, I still remember him asking me, well, don't you think they can do it? I said, yeah, but they have to learn from the submariners. This is what they do. Okay, if you don't understand that, again, you're fucking up by the numbers. Completely. And when our fleet engages the enemy, they're going to die. And they're going to get dead very, very quickly unless you do this right. Well, what about the ground troops? At least we got our space marines. I still remember slapping my own forehead and going, are you dumb? drunk, or high, because those are the only three I'm accepting. What the hell does a water grunt have to do with space combat at all? Well, what if somebody boards the ship? Do you know anything about space combat? Because apparently not. Boarding a ship like that is a quick way to be dead. And you don't think room to room clearing is something the Army does all the time? Tell the Marines to stick to embassy guard. It's what they're good at. They haven't actually been in true honest combat on a large scale like that in a long time. I know I pissed a lot of people off when I brought that up, but thankfully, certain people were listening, and they got their head out of their fourth point of contact. Because when I was brought in to see my battalion commander, there was the brigade commander and the division commander, along with their associated sergeant majors. And they said, okay, how would you fix it? You think you got this better than us? How would you fix it? And of course, I looked over at the man in the suit and immediately looked back at the commander and said, permission to speak freely, sir. Boy, he hesitated to say permission granted. I remember that. But he was just taking notes. And apparently, I was not the only one to bring this up, because they had already talked about the drop troopers. You guys know them as hell jumpers, where they got to go through hell and the atmosphere just to go into another hell once they get to the ground, if they get that far. And guess what? It's like the man said, if you're going through hell, go feet first. At least you're going to die on your feet. And of course, when they brought up, well, we'll just drop the Marines that way, I reminded them that the Army is the ones that do airborne ops, and this is just an extension of it. It was all I could do not to call him a dumbass. Thankfully, the guy in the suit was the one who was taking all the notes. And I found out later, it wasn't just me. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of people who brought this up. They were trying to design it like the video games. They forgot that the video games and all the other science fiction that we'd been watching for God knows how many generations had something called plot armor. I'm sorry. I trust my exosuit a whole lot better than I trust plot armor. And that is why, when we were actually dealing with the aliens, later on after that meeting, we found out that things had adjusted, and even they were happy about it. And I had actually made enough of a point that I was invited to a formal party where everybody had to be in their uniforms, and it was an intermix of our friends, the techs, and of course humans. And I'm not one of a party guy. In fact, I quit drinking after my third or fourth tour. I forget which one. Bad news bears if I start drinking. But because I'm a wallflower, something odd happened. One of the tech females actually came to talk to me. Well, that led in a totally different direction than I was expecting.